Andrew, I thought it was interesting that Bill Polian, one of your colleagues at ESPN, one of my colleagues over on satellite radio, that he's such an old school guy, and I was frankly stunned when he said yesterday he thinks Peyton Manning could be a general manager right away. As a guy that spent so much time in the Packers front office, do you really think a guy could go from being a player to the GM, making the decisions, making the calls on contracts, trades, and the draft right away?
Yeah, that's a tough one, but I don't doubt Bill, who's been around Peyton longer than any of us, and seeing his detailed preparation. Peyton seems like a guy, attention to detail. You hear the stories of calling the receivers in March at 3 a.m. to go over some pattern that they're going to use on a play in November. The whole key to being a GM is communication and getting all three parts of the football operation on the same page. Those three parts are coaching, player evaluation, and contract and cap management. As you mentioned, he doesn't have any experience in any of them. This would not be Peyton Manning going on the road, I think, every week scouting players, or Peyton Manning going through the salary cap point by point with agents. I think he's thinking more of an overall role, managing the three people that do those things, managing different departments. I think it will take time, but there are players quickly, Ross, that come along and you say, wow, he could do that if he puts his mind to it. One that I worked with for so long that's now part of Peyton's old team is Matt Hasselbeck. I see him eventually in that role if he wants that.
But to be clear, Andrew, if you were an owner and you had to hire a general manager, you wouldn't hire Peyton Manning or a player just finishing up, right? I mean, there's other guys that have been working in that part of the business towards that goal for years that have been in on those conversations as a personnel director or assistant GM, know how everything works. I mean, you wouldn't really hire one of these guys instead of one of them, would you?
No, I don't think you'd put him in the lead role right away, but maybe you'd have him apprentice, if you would, some kind of role where he sees those three parts I keep talking about, sees cap management and contract negotiations, sees player evaluation, putting together a board, sees how coaches work with personnel guys on playing young players and how to hold off on bringing in quick fixes or where to go on free agency. I think it's more of an eventual thing, but Peyton Manning certainly is a name that comes to mind eventually.
Talking to Andrew Brandt, he's all over ESPN television. The MMQB.com is who he writes for. Obviously spent a bunch of time as an agent before becoming the vice president of player finance for the Green Bay Packers. So I wrote earlier this week, Andrew, I think that if Peyton plays, it'll be for the Los Angeles Rams. Last night on the Jimmy Fallon show, Magic Johnson was really recruiting Peyton Manning to come to the Rams hard. What are your thoughts on my theory from a Rams perspective? I mean, this would be a no-brainer for them from a couple of different perspectives, right?
I guess I'm not as all on board on that. A couple things. One, Peyton Manning seems a guy kind of resistant to change, especially if it's short-term change. To come in there with a new system and be there for a short amount of time, I assume while they groom some younger player to take over, I just don't see it. The one thing we haven't talked about is Denver. I'm assuming he doesn't want to come to Denver, but also I don't think they want him. So what if he did want to come back to Denver? It almost seems like what I went through with Favre, where they were ready to turn the page to Aaron Rodgers as Osweiler in Denver, and it was difficult because, as we know, Brett wanted to come back eventually. So he's out of Denver. Does he want to play again? I just feel like no. I just feel like he recognizes diminished skills. And in terms of selling tickets for L.A., I mean, listen, they're worried about 2019, the new building. I'm not sure they're so worried about what happens in the Coliseum the next couple of years. They want to get the team right for later.
Andrew, were you disappointed in the way Brett handled that? I mean, I know you guys are friends. I know you're close, but that aspect of it, the retirement aspect of it, that last year, were you disappointed with how he conducted himself?
Well, I expected him to return because I just think that, listen, that season was unlike other off seasons. In the past, our management, we'd recruited Brett. We wooed him. We courted him to come back while he took his time to retire. This time after 2007, after the championship game in '08, we just sort of said it's up to him. Kind of the same comments Elway is making about Peyton right now. And it was a much different feeling that Brett got. He had a time frame before free agency to do it. He retired. And I just felt like he really didn't want to retire, but he just kind of didn't feel the warmth and courtship that he did in previous years, so he left. But he had it in his bones to come back. The question is, if Peyton retires in the next couple of weeks, does he feel the pull in May, June, July to come back? I don't think he would, but I wouldn't put it past it.
So talk to me about the Broncos right now. Brock Osweiler, Malik Jackson, and most notably Von Miller, all free agents. Sounds like they're going to franchise Von Miller, which means Osweiler could hit the market, which is really rare. How do you see this whole thing unfolding?
First thing is Vaughn. Listen, no player has leveraged himself in a better situation theoretically, but that's theoretically, Ross. Management has this weapon, the franchise tag, and the practical reality is Von Miller may never see the light of day as a free agent, which is an artificial restriction. For a guy like him, you just never know what the market will be. That management weapon of the tag is very powerful. People say it's only 10 players a year, but it really affects all the players under him, too, because he's going to set the top market. So every outside linebacker, defensive end is going to be in that range below him as they negotiate. So he's obviously going to be taken off the market, and if the Demaryius Thomas is a recipe, they'll wait to the deadline. You know what I say, deadline spur action in July, and maybe get something done, but it won't be what Miller could, of course, get on the market. Osweiler, I kind of see like Kirk Cousins. I just see these guys realizing at the end of the day, they're better off where they are. And that doesn't mean they're going to take too much of a discount, but I just see these negotiations ending before free agency with the teams that they're with. And Malik Jackson may be that guy that does get away for more money. We'll see what happens. But Osweiler's an interesting one to watch. I just think negotiations, I'd be surprised if they haven't already gone on.
So, Andrew, there's been a ton of guys cut already this week. Jari Evans from the Saints, Michael Griffin from the Titans. Yesterday, the New York Giants with Will Beatty, Jeff Schwartz. I think they were going to cut John Beeson until he retired instead. Do you think this is a big reason why the NFL is so popular? Sort of the ability to cut dead weight. Does the NFL have it right in your mind from a contract structure standpoint for the fans? Is it the most fan-friendly contract structure?
Well, it's certainly the most team-friendly and the least player-friendly. And thinking about it from the fan point of view, I suppose fans know that these guys that they think are dead weight, that they think should be moved on, can be, and maybe that is good for the fans. But I always say, Ross, this February time of year shows the complete illusory nature of these contracts. They're not worth the paper they're written on. You get past the guaranteed money in year 1 and 2, what do you have? $5 million, $6 million, $7 million, and it's just a number. With no security, no guarantee, these guys are just gone. A Jari Evans, a Michael Griffin, a Riley Cooper, a Justin Durant, and there'll be dozens more. So before the March additions, you have all these February deletions, which cost the team nothing. Yes, some cap room, but no cash because they've already paid out any guarantees. It just shows when we are going to read in a month about these $20, $50, $60, $80 million contracts, just know they're really 2-year deals, and then the team decides. And that's what's happening with all these deals.
What would you do in a situation, Andrew, if you were in the Lions front office? How hard would you try to convince a guy like Calvin Johnson to come back? Or if they're already thinking retirement, if they already pretty much want to retire, is it really worth trying to work hard to convince him to play one more year?
I think that's when you defer to the player, and you privately know that that might actually be good for your efforts there to rebuild that receiver position. He's taken up so much weight. He's been one of the highest paid receivers in the history of football, has some cap ramifications. The one issue there, Ross, is theoretically, and they've done this with Barry Sanders, they could go after bonus money if he retires. If they truly, privately, behind closed doors, are okay with him retiring, I think they have to make it known that they're not going to chase that money. That's part of the equation here. It's up to them to chase the money. It's not automatic, so they could file a grievance for the prorated signing bonus. But you just sense that if that's the way he's going to go, they're not going to fight that, and they'll let him move on with grace.
Really appreciate the time, Andrew, and for you pulling double duty for me this week. Thanks so much.
Always enjoy it, Ross. Thanks.